Okay, so, well, I'm desperate to begin with President Obama's presidential library because the pictures are just so astonishing. You're going to have to wait for that. First, we're going to start with President Trump having his big immigration meeting at the White House. So there were two purposes for this immigration meeting. Purpose number one is to push back on the Michael Wolff fire and fury narratives. That narrative, which we talked about at length yesterday, suggests that Trump is just a crazy person. Trump is a nut job, a child in a man body, a sort of a kook who's escaped from the asylum and is now running amok through the White House, destroying everything. And so Trump wanted to hold this bipartisan meeting to show, no, I'm going to have a basically normal meeting. And we'll have a bunch of Democrats to the White House, and we'll talk, and nobody will get hit in the head with a frying pan, and it'll totally be fine. And in that, he succeeded. He was fine. When it came to policy, however, things were not quite so glowing. The president gave a bunch of mixed signals about what he would be willing to sign or what he would not be willing to sign in terms of DACA. Now, to review, if you recall, back in 2012, Barack Obama passed into law, sort of, through executive order, the executive amnesty. This was the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program. It suggested that anyone between the ages of 16 and 30 at the time that he signed this into law, that those people would be able to stay if they were brought into the country as children and had been there for a certain amount of time. And that being the case, all those people would eventually be legal citizens of the United States, was sort of the unspoken promise that Obama was making. So Trump comes into office, and several months into his term, he decides that he is going to overturn DACA. But at the time, he says, DACA no longer applies. But if Congress doesn't pass some version of DACA to keep the so-called dreamers in the United States, then come March, maybe I'll just reinstate it, which is a weird statement to make because the whole reason for striking down DACA in the first place was based on constitutional grounds. He said it's unconstitutional for the president of the United States to simply say that a bunch of people are now going to get green cards to stay in the United States or papers that suggest that they can be here legally without the approval of Congress. So it'd be weird to reverse himself and then say, well, you know what, I decided the constitutional question doesn't matter. Now I want this policy back in place, and therefore it will be back in place. That would be a weird argument for Trump to make.